We're seeing a big sell-off from PC makers after Dell and HP missed quarterly estimates. For more, we're now bringing in Bob O'Donnell, President and Chief Analyst at Technalysis Research. Bob, it is great to see you as always. Let's talk more about Dell and HP, Bob. A common theme there being the PC. Revenue in Dell's PC business drops 1%. That missed. Sales in HP's PC unit, Bob, rose 2%, but that missed as well. When is the great PC refresh cycle, Bob, going to come? And when you look out, is that 2025? Is it 2026? And what's going to drive that, in your opinion?
Thanks, Josh. First of all, great to be here again, as always. And yeah, look, the PC market's in a very, very interesting time. And to specifically answer your question, I think 25 is the year where we see a lot of this happen. When we think about it on the commercial side, you've got several different factors going on. Number one, we are 4+ years past the pandemic, and a lot of PCs were bought at the beginning of the pandemic, and that 4+ year time frame is when there's typically a refresh anyway. So that's number one factor. Number two, we have the transition to Windows 11 being driven by the end of support for Windows 10, and that's happening again in 2025. And then last but not least, certainly, is the move to the AI PC. So a lot of corporations are saying, all right, look, I've got all three of these factors going on. All of this makes sense to help me drive a large purchase, a large refresh. And I think that's why we've seen, in general, these stocks have done very well for the first part of this year. You know, they're hitting some realities, which I'll get into in a second. But I think, you know, moving forward, those fundamental factors have not gone away. They have not changed. Yes, tariffs can have an influence here as well. But still, you've got a lot of businesses are going to have to refresh their PCs in 25, and that's going to help both Dell and HP.
Hey, Bob, it's Julie. Can you help me understand something about PC refresh cycles? You've been talking a lot about the corporate demand, right? And, you know, the Windows driving that. Does the corporate refresh cycle happen at the same time as the consumer? Does one lead the other? Or are they sort of independent of each other?
They're really independent of each other, Julie, and especially because, you know, during the pandemic drove an unusual corporate refresh. If you'll recall, back in 2020, there was a huge burst in PC sales, most of which was driven by corporate, because all of a sudden people had to work remotely and people didn't even have cameras in their notebooks. I mean, that's how old some of these things were. So there was a huge refresh then. Consumer has been always a cyclical type of thing where, you know, you've gotten a certain number of people every year that refresh. You know, the excitement that people are interested in is AI PCs, but in truth, for consumers, it's a tougher story. It's not as clear what some of the benefits that consumers are going to get for it. Yeah, it's a better experience, and if you if you do high-end video editing or music creation, there's a number of pretty cool apps that are out there. If you're a traditional mainstream PC user, the AI stuff is still being worked on. On the corporate side, on the other hand, things like text summarization and collaboration tools and the ability to, improve the quality of your image when you're doing a video call, all of those things have absolute day one, first day you use it, benefits. And that's why it's easier. You have to, however, consider one other factor, and that is this huge semiconductor transition we're seeing in the PC market. And so this is, I think, going to be a factor that we're going to see play out in 25. Obviously, we had Qualcomm with the initial Snapdragon stuff for the Copilot Plus PCs with Microsoft. Then Intel just came out, and AMD came out with their chips that are Copilot Plus. And there's a lot of rumblings that at CES, NVIDIA is going to enter the fray as well. So there's a lot of things going on out there right now. People are trying to figure it out. I think that's a little bit of why we're seeing some of the pause on the consumer side. There's a little bit of confusion out there with regards to that. And on the commercial side, some of those same factors, but for slightly different reasons.
I want to switch gears a bit, Bob, talk a little bit about Dell's AI servers, because what they said here, record AI server orders demand $3.6 billion. I'm just curious about what do you see ahead for that business? I mean, does AI provide as much of a big opportunity for Dell as the company thinks it does?
I think it does, Josh, and let me tell you why. And I just did some research on this to help that confirms my thinking here. So I did a study of 1,000 U.S. businesses asking about their interest in running AI models on-premise, that is in their own data centers. And of course, to do that, they need servers equipped with NVIDIA GPUs. And that's exactly what I think we're going to start to see play out in 26. And we'll see that for for HPE, for Dell, for Lenovo, and even Cisco is getting back into doing some servers for that market. And the reason why that's happening is most corporations still have a large percentage of their most precious, important data behind the firewall. Not all of it's on the cloud. And to use these foundation models for AI applications, you need to train it or with your own data. So if that data lives within your data center, it makes sense to run some of those models within your data center. Now, to be clear, that's not going to be everybody, but it's enough of a movement that I think it gives some growth opportunities for these companies that frankly have had a hard time in the enterprise market because everybody's moving a lot of their other workloads to the cloud. All of a sudden, those become an interesting opportunity. And I think we will see that in 25. And I think Dell is well positioned. And, what Jeff Clark talked about on the call in terms of, it's all about Blackwell and they can't get as many Blackwells as they'd like. Hey, that's a reality that everybody is facing.